Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this session of dtalks or Disruptive Talks on Education. I'm your host, Mashood. We continue to bring you stories and remarkable personalities who have transformed the realities of students and education systems in some of the most difficult circumstances. And one such organization which has really been a beacon of light in some of the most difficult territories of the country here in India has been the Sunbird Trust. It's a foundation, as we know, has been serving in the northeastern states of the country. Many of the regions Sunbird Trust works in are very remote. Uh, many of the schools that a Sunbird Trust is working with requires hours of walking from a part of the city or a town which is connected by road as well. So it's truly amazing to have with us today the founder and CEO of Sunbird Trust. It's also a foundation which has been really working in communities which has been impacted by conflict, and they're working on peace education as well. Uh, an absolute honor to welcome Colonel Christopher Rego, sir, who has been a truly charismatic leader. First serving in the army, and then he's set up the Sunbird Trust, and has after retirement taken up as the CEO of the foundation as well. He is, as we will also learn during the talk, he's a very multifaceted personality. He's a traveler. He's a music lover, a nature enthusiast, and an amateur herpetologist. Would love to learn more from you, sir, about this particular interest as well, and has written several books on the beauty of the Indian nation as well. So, on that note, we would like to welcome Mr. Chris Rego. Sir, thank you for joining us here on D Talks. Thank you for agreeing to share your vision of change on peace through education in Northeast India, and we're really looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you so much, Mashood. It is indeed a privilege to be on this show. Thank you very much. And good evening to everybody here in India and wherever you may be in the rest of the world.
Thank you,
So
sir.
I will.
Uh, we we would also encourage all the people who are joining us live to also share their questions and comments on the chat section of YouTube and Facebook, and we'll try our best to take some of these questions after Chris sir's presentation is completed. Yes, sir.
Okay, going ahead. Am I seen, Mashood?
Yes, sir. Your presentation is well visible.
Thank you. Thank you. So, good evening once again. I happen to have the good fortune of serving in the Indian Army for a good 32 years. And during that time, I got to travel the length and breadth of the country. And for, I could say, very selfish reasons, I asked to be posted in the Northeast twice. And those reasons were multifarious, very much aligned to my hobbies and interests, which is culture of the people, the natural beauty, so many beautiful things about the Northeast, uh, the adventure of going to every part of the Northeast is different. And those turned out to be the most transformational years of my life, a total of 8 years during two tenures spent between Mizoram and Manipur. And during that time, got to interact very closely with the people of those two states and see things from a different lens altogether. So when you come from the so-called mainland, you come invariably with a prejudice that people of the Northeast or things in the Northeast are like this and that. And when you actually stay in the Northeast and you live among the people, you get a completely different view of the reality and the nuances of life over there. So I'll tell you the journey of my organization, Sunbird Trust, and how, what were the reasons and what was the why we took on the type of work that we're doing. Let's start with the logo. So our logo has got a lot of meaning. The sunbird, as Mashu just told you, I'm a nature lover. So we chose a bird that is found across the northeast and which symbolizes energy, the sunbird. And the yellow of the sunbird reflects the light of peace, of education, of amity. The green on the background is the rich forests and traditions of the people of the Northeast. And the wings of the sunbird extending beyond the globe is that they will transcend all the problems that they may be facing, such as the conflict or the poverty and whatever else. So, and most of all, our logo is a neutral logo, as we happen to be a very neutral organization and a humanistic organization, not involved in any agenda of politics or religion and things like that. So, why do we do what we do? Let's start with the Northeast itself. So, for those of you who are in perhaps another part of the world, this is the Northeast of India, which is encircled. It's normally called the Seven Sisters, though when you count them, there's an eighth, Sikkim, which is slightly in a different place with Bhutan in between. So, these are the eight Northeastern states. And I'm happy to say that Sunbird Trust is working in all these states with the exception of Tripura, where maybe we soon may be going. So, what are the things that are unique to northeast of India? It's a veritable melting pot of so many identities with varied aspirations. Just to give you an example, the state of Manipur, where most of our work is concentrated, uh, it's a state of just 2.8 million people. And in those 2.8 million people, you have as many as 34 different identities, tribes, each one of them having a different language or a dialect, a different way of life. And that is just one state. If you go across the states of the Northeast, there are perhaps 400 to 500 different tribes and communities, each with their different culture, way of life, their own aspirations. So within this melting pot, there are huge ethnic, cultural, and religious differences, which makes it at times a little difficult for people to hang together because with all that comes issues of identity which have been there for centuries, nationalism, and battling for resources. Another thing about the northeast of India, it has been at a limb from the country and at a very remote place. So, infrastructure, even though decades have happened since independence, more than 70 years, um, the infrastructure has not kept pace with the rest of the country. So, that is another problem that is faced in the northeast. The remoteness, there are tiny, tiny villages. Sometimes you have hills with just 20 huts, more than 40, 50 kilometers from the other nearest place. So it is something which is the way of life of people. You still have people in the Northeast who are hunter gatherers, who don't use money. And of course, at the same time, you do have the cities which are coming up very rapidly. The Northeast, because of its issues of, ethnic, cultural, and religious differences, and the aspirations of the people, has had decades of instability, conflict, and separatism. Fact that India got independence on the 15th of August 1947 did not mean that everybody got banded together. That is rather work in progress, which is slowly happening. So to show you some of the violence, this is an organization which I worked for, the Border Roads Task Force. This was a vehicle blown up by separatist militants in Manipur 2, 3 years ago. This is a boy who's been affected by drugs, by injecting himself. And then there is a perception by many of the northeastern people that they are not fully, there are certain, you may call it racist. That's their perception, though things have changed very, very much in the past few months and past few years. That is something that is quickly being overcome. One of the main things that, one of the main reasons for that sense of, the separatist thing is because of the difference of ethnicity. So the people on the northeastern side, you could say, have mainly Mongolite features. They are recognizable identity as compared to the people in the rest of the country. There are differences, like I mentioned, culture, religion, and so many different things. So that is a big cultural bridge that has to be a cultural gap that has to be bridged. So here are the questions that I had to ask. So to meet this insurgency and to sort of deal with this separatism, it has unfortunately been violent for decades. And with this, the government has poured in resources in terms of the army, the CRPF, and the paramilitary forces in their thousands to maintain the writ of the state. And things could be getting, in fact, getting a lot better. But the big question is, how could the limited resources that we have, instead of being spent on security, be freed up for social needs, for livelihoods, for health, for education? And how can we, put peace and progress where we can get all the stakeholders to communicate on any one plane, get everybody together? And so, what is that unique element, that would get everybody to think and work together without any hesitation? And that's where, when I thought about it very deeply, when I was posted in Mizoram way back in 2003, I came to the conclusion that it had to be education. The reason why I say this is that what we noticed when my wife and I were posted over there in Mizoram way back in 2003 was that kids were not getting a chance to get into the system in the first place. And without getting a chance to be educated and without being empowered, there were, of course, no jobs. And then it became very easy to get radicalized, to go across the border, maybe to Myanmar, sometimes to do wrong activities, smuggling, drugs, as also to join groups with certain agendas. That became the obvious solution when the youth had nothing else to do. So I thought of this concept that let's use children's education as the way to peace. And to do this, let's get all these stakeholders, starting right from the village to the broader society of the state, the uniformed forces, the government, and the entire country, that is, people like you and me in every other part of the country, to work for this one thing which is of mutual interest to all of us. So that is the whole background of how and what we are trying to do. So, what is the vision of Sunbird? So it is building peace through education and empowerment of children and youth, mainly in the conflict affected areas of northeastern India, the states that have suffered very badly over the past few decades. So, what do we do for that? The three basic parts of it, components are it. We firstly provide that financial access to education by sponsoring children and getting them into the education system. Secondly, we get the physical access to education by building schools and hostels in these very remote areas where there is very little educational infrastructure. And thirdly, most important, in fact, the education is a means to this end, which is mindset change through our community engagement. When I talk of mindset change, I talk of it in a holistic manner, not just of the people of the Northeast, but also the people of the security forces, the government, the rest of the country, coming to more of a mindset of working together and leaving behind the baggage of the past. So, what would be now the challenges of working with children, mainly in the conflict affected areas and in all these other remote parts of the Northeast? So, first and foremost, I again come back to the state of Manipur with a population of 2.8 million people and more than 30 different identities, where the language changes every 40 kilometers or so. Okay, and the culture changes, and there has been conflict which keeps people apart and scared to sort of go between these areas. So, this is one of the challenges that children would face over here. Exposure without any resources in terms of good schools, in terms of good teachers, in terms of even any of the, whether you call it be health or livelihood or so many other things. And because of the conflict, they are sort of trapped in their villages and robbed of a vision of not only rest of the world, but even outside their own village, their own community, and the rest of the state. So this is something that these kids don't get to see, unlike the children in the city who get exposed to people of different cultures, religions, different parts of the country. This is something these children don't get. In fact, this is one of the reasons which I could say was even the start of the insurgency. When you look at certain tribes, their nation state was not, a state of Manipur or a state of Nagaland or was still India. Their nation state was their village, or even smaller, the little communities. That was their nation state. And they were not used to being ruled from people from outside, different looking people with a different culture from far away telling them what to do. So that is something that has kept the insurgency going. Now, coming to the education, textbooks, one size fits all, prescribed from by people who do not know the nuances, who do not know the culture, who cannot be. And I would say straight away that it's very, very difficult. So non-contextual textbooks, again, another challenge. Ingrained teaching practices of, not really the trained thing which have come across for decades and decades, just uh, uh, young children sometimes themselves just pass their 10th and 12th standard trying to teach other children. Thing of the worst thing is rote learning, all pervasive in many parts of our country, which is very, very pronounced even here in the Northeast. Total absence of things like critical thinking. Other things like, this is something which is again very, very unique here in the hills, because sometimes you have a hill with 10 or 15 huts, you have another hill with another 40, 50 huts. Every hillock cannot have a school, and these are spaced sometimes 4 or 5 kilometers apart with a river in between. So the kids get very badly impacted when they have to get to school, and sometimes it's a journey of 1 to 1.5 hours, 2 hours either way, and crossing a stream, coming out of the slush, picking the leeches off their feet, getting to school. That is the challenge. The kids have, of course, been at the brunt of all this, the decades of instability, of fear, of conflict, and of course the separatist thing. Affordability, being the children of sometimes, like I say, even as just hunter gatherers, people living off the forest, to suddenly come to school and to pay for textbooks and uniforms and to pay for their fees. Not all government schools are functional, unfortunately, due to the insurgency and due to many other factors. And the private schools that are there to pay their teachers do have to charge. So this is another killer in terms of the education. The lack of role models, they are basically, most of them are first or at best second generation learners. And living in such remote areas, other people have the benefit during COVID of having their homework sent to them by cell phones. These are pipe dreams in places like this. And of course, erratic electricity, that means cannot even study in the night, sometimes even weeks without electricity. So these are some of the challenges that our children face in the schools in the Northeast. This is a typical example. This is a school that we built in the south of Manipur. And this was the type of approach road that the kids had to negotiate during the monsoons every single day. So we actually had to shift this school to another location to get over this problem. And this is in Assam. This is a yearly predictable routine when the floods come. These are lucky children who can walk to their school through the water. But there are children who actually, like you pay for a bus, have to pay for a boat to get to school, but come to school they will. So these are the type of unique challenges which are not seen in too many other parts of the country. So what do we do to increase the foundational literacy given these challenges that we have? First and foremost, we bring in these highly trained teachers, from different parts of the country. So Sunbird has many Teach for India fellows. We have very highly trained people in masters in education from organizations like the Azim Premji Foundation. We have masters in social work. We bring in these young people from all parts of India to teach in our extremely remote schools, stay there with the community, train not only the children but train the teachers as well. And like I said, the most important is teacher training, so that the knowledge is transferred not only to the teachers but from those teachers to the students. This is a very critical part of our intervention, because these teachers in these remote areas would never see this type of training. First and foremost, they are not teachers in the first place. They would be just probably, like I said, young students who have just passed their, maybe their 10th or their 12th or maybe a little higher, and trying to teach as best as they can. So this is where our teacher training plays a big role. Equity of resources. So going forward in this presentation, I will just show you our intervention in a couple of villages where we have tried to bring about this equity. Why should the children be in the northeastern areas, in these remote places, be without the frills or the necessities that children in the rest of India have? For instance, good laboratories, libraries, even basic furniture, basic schools. So this is something that Sunbird is doing in a big way to bring equity. And there's, of course, the big element where our young professionals of our organization, my colleagues, they do this curricular design to bridge the literacy gap. And we have this activity-based learning, for instance, phonics. And another big mistake in the whole education system is textbooks that are not at all related to what the children experience. They cannot relate to so many things that so many of the subjects that are taught to them. So, to the best of our ability and to the best of what is available, we introduce this contextual textbook. Importantly, visual aids in classrooms, to the extent of we try to get them at least one good, a TV screen or a projector in every school to give them a window to the world. So we not only show them educational movies, we show them, the BBC movies on nature. So they get some sort of a thing, though they cannot travel out, they get a picture of the world. And like I said, the movie night through Sunbird provided devices. These are again where we bring in very chosen movies to increase their worldview of the children. So, in the basic thing of all our work, our education, and whatever we do is to bring peace. Like I said, our whole aim is to bring this mindset change by which resources will not have to go towards, conflict management, towards bringing in the uniform forces, where there is a total change of mindset. It may take years and years. This is not something that's going to happen in 1 or 2 years or 5 years or maybe even 10 years. Okay, but a start has to be made, and we in Sunbird Trust are actually tasting the fruit of this. So, what is peace education in a nutshell? So, it's something that aims to preempt conflict in advance, or rather to educate individuals and a society for a peaceful existence on the basis of non-violence, tolerance, equality, respect for differences, and social justice. So, it is here that we start with our own team. We are a team of now 26 individuals and another, say, 14 odd interns, almost 40. We come from more than, I think, 10 or 15 states from across the country. We are from 6 different religions. We speak different languages. We are equally divided between, the genders. And when we come to these villages which have seen a monoculture of one tribe or one community, our team members have a real big influence on the mindset of the people. They are literally a sort of thing to see what the other can be. And these things of, so all our schools are called friendship schools, which mean that there is no sort of bias in for any sort of culture, religion, tribe, and things like that. And gender issues through our team itself, again, our young women are role models for the young girls of the village to show what gender equality could be. So, what is it that we do, especially in peace education? First is our concept of friendship schools. Every one of the schools which Sunbird has partnered with, which we are trying to build, has got the second name as friendship. The first name is left to the local community to put something in their language. So we have a Pankriang friendship school. We have a Lizon friendship school. And friendship denotes, even to the children, that they know it's in the name of their school, that they will respect other communities, they will have a sense of inclusiveness, of plurality. So that is the first thing of our friendship schools. We deliberately try to bring in this culture of acceptance. This is something that I borrowed from the spiritual leader, Sri Sri Ravi Shankar. It is broaden the vision in terms of everything, a worldview, and yet deepen your roots in terms of celebrate your culture, celebrate your roots, celebrate from where you come from. So both are not mutually exclusive. This is something that we, in every village where we go, we encourage our children to celebrate where they came from, regardless of what it may be. We deliberately, as I mentioned, inject diversity. This is something very critical to what we do. Religion wise, culture wise, language wise, ethnicity wise. So, some of these children, for the first time in their lives, they have, previous to this, during the insurgency, seen Indians as only people in the uniform of the Assam Rifles or the army coming with the guns in their hands. That was something that may or may not have been avoided during that time. But now they see India with a different lens of this girl, say from a state like UP, or a girl from Kerala, or a boy from Gujarat coming and staying in their village, teaching the children, bringing up their school, training the teachers. So that becomes the new sense of India. We use a lot of music and sports. These are things that unite tremendously people across different cultures and different communities. So when you look at music, now for instance, like I said, there are so many different languages, and one big barrier is that many of the children cannot speak the language spoken by most Indians, which is Hindi. And now, not that we ever try to enforce this language on anybody, but we do think that it's empowering if they know a bit of Hindi, so that when they come to the so called mainland, they will be able to sort of adjust very easily. It is never at any time made to supersede their own mother tongue. So, how do we give them a love for Hindi? At least an acceptance of Hindi. We start with Hindi music. So when the kids start singing Hindi music, and we have some beautiful Sunbird videos, they start wanting to see the videos and the dances. And then when they see that, they want to see the entire movie. And in no time, through those movies and whatever they see, their acceptance of something much broader is just sunk into them. And sport, we have a lot of competitions. We have a lot of at times when we bring children from different communities to play together for competitions. It's always a uniter. National integration tours, we have taken our children to different parts of India. There are some children who have barely left their village, who have not even seen a bus, a train, or a plane. And we have taken these children sometimes with the help of the Assam Rifles, in fact, with the big help of the Assam Rifles and the army, taken them to other parts of India, so that they're able to see beyond their tiny villages. As a matter of fact, Sunbird Trust has brought 35 children from the Northeast to study in Bangalore from these tiny villages more than 3 years ago. And in fact, many of them, 14 of them, have now graduated and come back to the organization. Humanizing. Now, this is two-way. We don't talk of humanizing one way. It's a community that has seen the armed forces from a different lens of the oppressor, people coming with guns, checking them, stopping them at checkposts. Now we get the armed forces, the Assam Rifles and the army to come in. They do, with their own resources, medical camps. They take the children out on the tours, like I mentioned. They sometimes contribute to the water supply or building toilets. And they come and play games with our children in the school. And so we humanize the armed forces. At the same time, when our children are, say, playing with the armed forces, with the boys from the camp, the neighboring camp, or they're going to their units, there is again humanizing of the children in the eyes of the armed forces personnel. So now let me give you an example of our first school and our first, you could say, the first place from where we started and we tried our work of peace through education. So deep in the hills, a forested area in the west of Manipur, a place called about 17 kilometers from a town called None, is this tiny village called Ejerong. It's a village belonging to the Inpui Naga, where the people are almost entirely from the Inpui Naga community, including all the neighboring villages. So way back in the year 2014, some of the people from this village who had heard about my previous work in Mizoram came across to me and asked me if I could visit their village to help out with the local school, which happened to be the only school for those 7 or 8 villages. Now, that time I was a serving army officer, and the insurgency was at its fullest. And this was a village known to harbor, or at least that entire area was known to have militants who had actually been ambushing soldiers, and vice versa, of course. So it was quite a challenge, but seeing the trust, took a leap of faith and went to this village. And here is the story. So when I reached that village, saw the condition of the school. It was just determination of the villagers that had kept it going. There were mud floors, all these tin sheet classrooms with holes in them. And this was the site that had the most profound impact on me. Uh, you wouldn't guess what it was. So children from all the neighboring villages cannot afford to come to, all walk that distance, 2 hours, 3 hours sometimes, to get to the school. So they have to stay close to the school. And they cannot afford hostels or even staying with the local people because it's so expensive. So we have this thing called self self-help kitchens, which is there in many parts of the Northeast. It would be a surprise to many people. So what is this? It is basically this, you can see this row of little kitchens, which is made by the school so that these kids, starting from age 5 and 6, like you can say here, can cook by themselves. So their parents come once in a week or once in 2 weeks, leave them with firewood, maybe a bag of rice, and these kids run into the forest to get some mushrooms, get some leaves, or they run down to the stream, try and catch some little fish or snails, and cook and live happily by themselves. So this is something that shocked me, that when I saw my own kids and I saw the children of the rest of India so comfortable, and here were these kids who were washing, cooking, struggling to study, no electricity, and still determined, to get through. That's when I decided to jump in. And my thing to the village folks was that, guys, let's do this together. You bring what you have, and we can work together and see what is to be done. So this is the scene. You see this flat ground in front of you, and over the next few pictures, you will see what Sunbird has done in barely 4 to 5 years. So if you look at the hills around, you'll see these, at the top of these hills, there are invariably little clumps of huts. The children come down these slopes, cross the river, and come up to this village, which is Ajarong, and come to the school over here. So the village offered me this this beautiful patch of ground to start the hostel. And they said that, sir, we will help you to the best of our ability. The forest is ours. We will give you the wood. We'll give you stone from our fields. We'll give you labor from our community. Please help us with the rest. So I went to the commander of the Assam Rifles, a very, very helpful person who knew the work that we were doing. And they gave me these beautiful sheets, which you see, the blue sheets. The Border Roads Organization gave me cement. The Army and the Assam Rifles helped me to transport these materials in. And presto, within 6 or 7 months, we had built this beautiful hostel. So first day in the hostel, surprise, I made these bunk beds thinking that, one bed for each child. But then I came to know that these children, that's not the way they lived at all. They had 2 or 3 siblings sharing the same bed for the simple reason that they could not afford 3 blankets or 3 mattresses. So a hostel that we started in 2015 for just 40 children. In 2016, we were 150. And then my friends and colleagues jumped in with solar. We built a kitchen. We did away with the self-help system. We got them musical instruments, helped out with number of things, built them better classrooms. And 2018, the number jumped to 250. So now I had to put my foot down. I said, we cannot put children like this. Now, this was the onus of the school. I was just an outsider doing the facilitation. So, but in spite of that, I tried to say that we cannot have this type of number of children staying in this hostel. About that time, there was an earthquake which demolished one entire village, and overnight 60 children had no school or no place to come. They all trooped into this hostel. So as an emergency, the entire village came together and pulled the hostel in all directions, and we had 250 children staying in this hostel. Thankfully, to the help of some good organization, the Jai Shiv Shakti Foundation in Bangalore, we were able to build this beautiful hostel, and things are much more streamlined now. The children live in quite a comfortable way. So the same patch of ground to show you what are the assets that we build again to get equity for these children in the forest. We've got people from the rest of the country contributing. So this is just a place. Otherwise, during the rains, they couldn't stand outside for their assembly. Luminous came in and put in solar for our entire school and the hostel. This, again, another donor, an ex-IS officer who had served in Manipur, Mr. Chandrasekhar Balagopal, graciously came forward through his Anaha Trust and contributed the Skilling Center with a computer center on the ground floor, a science laboratory in the mid floor, and a music academy on the top floor. Now, all seem to be believed in a matter of 2 to 3 years in the middle of the forest. So that's the computer center. These kids have taken to it really well, and their skill has just shot up over the past month of years. Now, this is an area where the children are more inclined towards Western music. There are schools where we have in Assam where the children are Indian music, but the music was not as a luxury or not so much as a relaxation, but also as a livelihood. because many of these children may not have the propensity to finish school, to get good marks, to get good jobs. We see a big opportunity opening of children becoming music teachers later. So that's one of the backgrounds behind the music center. This is now all the 250 children you saw eating in those small huts. This is the beautiful uh, dining hall that was built with the help of the H.T. Parekh Foundation. Very grateful to them. All 250 children in one day, also a place where we have lovely get togethers. Now we come to a different phase altogether. So, coming to the second of our quite a few schools. So, the village of Poichi is located, say, about 4.5 to 5 kilometers away from Ejerong, which you just saw. And till this school, which I'm going to talk about, was built, all these children had to trudge through the forest. These tiny tots had to come and reach Ajarong every day, going and coming, which was quite a problem. Now, this village was known, for whatever reasons, the army had a big camp over here with the men armed to the teeth to battle the insurgents. And, this camp was over here. For whatever reasons, the army decided to vacate. I would like to think it was a lot to do with the more peaceful situation coming in this particular area. And I approached the brigadier and I asked him, I said, your beautiful barracks still, a couple of months ago where everybody was staying, water, toilets, living accommodation. So he said, sir, what on earth would you want to do with it? So I said, these people are crying for a school. He said, brilliant idea, please take the keys tomorrow. So the army has lent us these barracks, which what looks like on a permanent basis, it still belongs to them. But what was an army camp is now a beautiful school. This is the entire village. They could not imagine that the camp in the center of the village was now going to be the place where their tiny tots could come. So everybody came, the men, the women. They did the cementing, cleaning, whitewashing, everything. And the carpenters, they cut the trees from their forest and they made this beautiful furniture. These are the happy kids in the school. We put in a small nutrition scheme, which we found that the kids badly needed. This was the inauguration of the school. The entire community came out to celebrate. In the background, you can see buildings that once hosted the soldiers with the guns has now got beautiful paintings on it. Um, this is the type of situation in many of the villages that were around there. I'm now coming to some of the other schools of Sunbird Trust, which I will just briefly show you. So this was the condition of the schools in some of our villages. Um, Very remote part of Manipur where there was no access by road. And when we had to build the school over there, believe it or not, this was the way to go. We had elephants to haul the logs to build the school. And another school in the south of Manipur, Singat, built by Sunbird Trust. And yet another school built very deep in Assam, a village called Mualdam. This is with the kind help of the Manas Foundation. The previous school held by a philanthropist from Bangalore, Mr. Dakoju Ravi Shankar, and his wife, Miss Paula Ravi Shankar. And yes, so all of the work that we are doing, the education, like I said, is just a means to the end. And that end is winning the trust of the people. And how does it happen? So let's start with the children. So the whole concept of peace through education is when you help a child, get a child into the education system, sponsor that child, support that child, pay for their boarding fees, get them good teachers. That doesn't stay with the child. It's carried to the parents who have not seen India in a very good light before, or according to their perception, that is. And now they find that so-called Indians, as people are called frequently in some parts of the Northeast, they see them as their friends, as people who are bringing their children up, who love their children, teach their children, care for them. And this spreads from the child to the parent, from the parent to the village, from the village to the neighboring village, from these villages to the entire tribe. So that is how our hostels and schools become hubs of peace and amity, and how we sort of spread the word. That is the process of peace through education, not just the education of the child. Some of the things, this is our teachers and our team members. This is the type of bonding that is going on. I'm talking about the ventures, the way in that we try to bond with the community. These are the women's groups in the villages. I think they're very important as the decision makers, and they are our big partners in every single village that we work in. And so beyond the children's education, we talk to the women. I would like to just say that just as recently as 10 days back, we had an incident where a good for nothing person came to cause trouble for our team members because they were outsiders, and this was a militant area or whatever. And I think that person was seen off by the women of the village who said, "Don't dare come here and interfere with these good people who are helping our children." So that's with the women. And this is something that had not happened in decades. These are the same areas where there had been ambushes. Now, the boys that you see in the pink are our army soldiers from the neighboring camp playing volleyball, not just with our boys, but with our boys and our girls. So, this is what I talked about, the humanizing effect. Uh, a volleyball match. So again, now the children seeing the army guys in uniform differently as friends. People who come and play volleyball and football with them. In the background is our beautiful Sunbird shelter built for us in Ejurong village. We are happy to have the complete support of the Indian Army and the Assam Rifles. Um, we think that this is, like I said, all the stakeholders working together. It's a team of teams to get, to tackle this problem of, and to get this mindset change. And we were singularly honored to have the Chief of Army Staff himself come to inaugurate one of our hostels. This was on the 25th of November last year at Kohima. Happy to say that the Army supports us in many different ways, especially the logistics when it's frightfully expensive to bring in things like mattresses and furniture. They help us with things like cement, projects, building toilets. This is how a lot of good relationship is being built up in this area of conflict. Of course, we are into multiple now efforts with the community. Like we train them in mushroom making. We even got a venture for the mushrooms. And at the most important time, I'd like to say when the going got tough, the tough got going. Uh, Manipur, Nagaland, everybody was in terrible shape with the COVID. Happy to say that the Sunbird team, not a single one left their posts. All stayed in their villages through the worst of the COVID. Now, this picture is not in Manipur. This happens to be in Bangalore, where the word had spread. This is the height of the migrant crisis during July, August of 2020, last year, when all these young people who were in their colleges and their hostels were shut and they were just asked to move on. Many were in jobs in the hospitality industry, all those boutiques and hotels, restaurants closed down. And many of them were left without an income, without even food. So this is when they heard about Sunbird, and the entire Northeast community of Bangalore would like to say that Sunbird Trust was the nodal organization of reaching out to them at this most difficult time. And back in Manipur, this is a place where 30 villages did not have an ambulance. This is donated by the Prestige Foundation from Bangalore, again, big sponsors of ours, and we're very, very grateful to them. And all our sponsors, again, the Manas Foundation and the Srijan Foundation from Calcutta, Anaha Trust and Mr. Balagopal from Kerala, all of them, joined us immediately. And I'd like to say that this relief came way before the government relief could actually come to these hospitals. When they desperately needed these items, even the sanitizers and the gloves and the oxygen concentrators and all that. So happy that Sunbird could metamorph into this type of an organization when the need was there and our schools were closed. So anyway, that is about a huge amount that we have sort of invested in that through our donors. And so our concept of intervention in the education field is not just sponsoring the children and let them go. It is more of, as far as possible, a sort of a commitment for as long as possible. So most of our children, as you'll see in our figures, we have reached more than 4,000 children now, are sponsored up to the 10th standard, but a large number of them go through to college, to post-graduation, and maybe even beyond. And we have a personal connect with these children. We like to have a one-to-one sort of a mentorship and connect with them, where they themselves feel a sense of belonging and partnership with of ownership of our organization. So a few stories to share. I'd mentioned to you that 35 children from Manipur had come down to Bangalore. They had done brilliantly in the best colleges. Some of them did engineering, law, BA, BSc, social work. And these children were with my wife and self and our Sunbird team members for the past 3 years. And we've been so fortunate that 14 of them graduated in September. And out of the 14, as many as 11 are back with us teaching in our schools as our interns. A few of them are now going for their post-graduation, and one boy has even secured a scholarship to go to Italy for his post-graduation. Talking about interns, talking about alumni, this is Shamrafi. She is a girl that uh, right from her school days was with us, happened to show a lot of dedication and promise. And right through from her 8th standard through her 10th, 11th, 12th, her graduation, she happened to be a rank holder in her social work. And then she was in fact the first of our 2000, of our many children. Immediately upon her graduation and getting the first rank in Manipur, she joined Sunbird Trust for a complete year and very proudly became our first alumnus team member. Then went and did a master's and has again come back to Sunbird Trust. So that is what I'm talking about, sustainability. Okay. These are the 4 graduates who finished their engineering from the Thamaya Institute of Technology. Very grateful to my classmate, Mr. Venkat Vardhan of the DNA Entertainment Networks, who had looked after so many of these youngsters for their law and engineering. The person who is second from the left is the one who is going to Italy for his post-graduation. These are some of our youngsters who have graduated, come back and serving with us right now. 2 of them are even going for their masters. Dilip Chakma from the Chakma community from Mizoram finished his law from the National Law School, was selected as a magistrate with the Chakma Autonomous District Council, but now has his own NGO. And Dr. Benjamin Kyangte, talking again from my years with the Assam Rifles in Mizoram, a super specialist doctor, now perhaps the most qualified double specialist doctor in Mizoram. But what is even more fantastic, again, sustainability. Not only has he sort of helped his entire village, but he's now bringing 7 children of, sponsoring children in their college education. So most important, we would not have been able to do anything of what we did without our beautiful team, and I do have a lot to say about it. So this is a picture very recently taken, a total of about 26 of us from different parts of the country, like I mentioned, different parts of the Northeast as well, completely diverse in culture, in religion, and in this group are a doctorate from Glasgow University in biotechnology. We have hotel management. We have masters in social work. Most are Teach for India graduates. Ali, who is on my right, and our current chief of operations, uh, gave up the corporate world at the age of 45, did his Teach for India fellowship, and then came to Sunbird Trust. So he's now a team member with us. So this is the beautiful team. You could see Sonal in the blue in front of me, who was our chief operating officer for the past 3 years. The one I was mentioning, an IIT postgraduate with a doctorate from London and a Teach for India to boot, came and was the one who really ran this organization for the past 3 years. So all the people you see in this photograph have stuck it out through the COVID, stayed in the tiny villages, sometimes without gas, cooking on firewood, without provisions, without sometimes electricity, connectivity, and happy, smiling, contributing. This is a total commitment. And for them, I always encourage them with this is the US Army thing, be all you can be, which is what is very, very motivating for our team members, because we give them. So what do we expect and how do we get the very best into Sunbird? This is no ordinary job where you do not know where you will be sort of with the militancy, or you'll be a threat to your life. There will be sort of violence or bans or so many other things that could come. So what is the bar and what do we require of people who join Sunbird Trust? Their adaptability, full commitment. This is not a 9 to 5 job. It is 24/7, complete immersion into work and the community. A sense of curiosity to learn. Every village is different. Every village has got a different nuances, culture, the children, whatever. So this sense of curiosity to understand. And said in a very nice way, jack of all, master of many actually. We cannot have a Sunbird person who say, I'm only here to teach. A Sunbird team member has to come, has to be a community person, has to perhaps know to drive a vehicle, to do multiple things in multiple dimensions, to mentor some of our graduate students, multiple things. And very, very important, has to be imbibed with the team spirit. We are widely dispersed, widely challenged, something that is critically important. The dignity of work. There's no such thing as, oh, I'm a master's in so and so, I will not sweep the room, or I will not, do this particular work. Starting from the top to the bottom, we have this dignity of work and dignity of labor. And the bottom of it all, the reason for our existence and where the education leads us all is community all the time. Our whole work is towards getting to the broader community through the children. Fun, non negotiable, whatever we do, wherever we are, whatever be the situation, everything else, there will be fun, there will be music, there will be picnics. That's the team. Now, to give a nutshell of the Sunbird schools, this is what we have been able to achieve. Mostly, all this has happened from, you could say, mid 2016 or late 2016 to now. We've built 7 schools with at least another 3 coming up this year, 8 hostels, again with another maybe 4 or 5 right now. Sponsored children, by the end of this year, we would be reaching the figure of 8 or 9,000. This figure is a little subdued because during the COVID, there was no recruitment of the children. We have as many as uh, currently sponsoring 73 undergraduates with another 140 sponsored and will be joining now as the colleges open. We work with as many as 57 partner institutions, which is where these 4,200 children come from. And we already have 76 graduate alumni. Like I mentioned, 14 of them already working with us. Others have moved on to jobs. There are 4 or 5 of them who are abroad. All of them have done well in their chosen careers. We are impacting well over 150 villages through our schools and through our children and through the places that we work. Um, at least 14,000, 15,000 people impacted by the work. So what is our mission? 2025, we have set ourselves quite a target, and I believe that with the great support of our very loyal donors such as Caring Friends, Anaha Trust, and our many mentors and our trustees, our advisors, we have advisors like the ex-Director General of Assam Rifles, General Shokin Chauhan. We have Mr. Balagopal Chandrasekhar, who himself is a big uh, donor, and Mr. Louis Miranda, who is a father figure to many, many NGOs, including Sunbird, in terms of raising us. So we have had the best of the best. So what is our mission? 2025, we intend to build, I'm sorry, there should have been 50 institutions, either schools or hostels, and educate 25,000 children by the year 2025. I believe that we are on that path. Thank you. So this is what a nutshell of Sunbird and what we do.
Thank you, Colonel Christopher Rego. Wow, like this was quite a journey, and it's it's there's so many emotions for anyone who's just listened to your presentation. Uh, there's inspiration, there is transformation. Uh, you know. There's humor, especially the wonderful picture where the elephants were carrying the logs. That was quite interesting. But truly, I mean, and what a remarkable team and what a remarkable journey you've been able to lead, and in some of the most difficult circumstances. And so here, actually, I would like to start with your team specifically, because your team is like a microcosm of India. So many different cultures brought together in one team, from so many different places, different backgrounds, and they kind of coming together to work in some very difficult circumstances. So my question is, when you started with the very first school, or that very first visit where you were like, okay, this is something which I'm going to do, and I'm going to build resilience of children. How did you like motivate yourself and your team to say that we're going to go and do it this?
So, I always feel very proud that I took that leap across the barrier of suspicion, of worry, of, never knew you're going to be killed. That was frankly the thought. In fact, there was a time when somebody complained to a very senior officer that the local army officer that there is this mad colonel who comes here, people are being killed, and he comes here on a picnic, and he could be shot anytime, and all of us are going to be blamed. That was the type of situation. But I think at some stage it was trust, it was an openness, and a very clear articulation of what we could do for the people. uh, why I think people are with us very strongly is they see Sunbird people as people without an agenda of money, of politics, religion, of changing their culture, of interfering with them. They see us purely as people to sort of empower them, get their, where they're desperate to get their children to be educated, and they see us as guys who come and do that without any strings attached. So if you're looking at the motivation, I saw, when, like I said, you get a different lens when you're in a different part of India. But when you live in these villages and you meet people who are from, all over here, you see human beings, and you understand they have the same difficulties as you, but I think they're shown of a lot of the selfishness that comes in the towns and the cities. It's very, very welcoming. It's very, very enjoyable to be there among the warm communities, nature. And I saw endless possibilities. I just thought that me as an army colonel, just with a few calls, could do so much, to help these kids. And this was one of the major reasons. For instance, a person from the village going to a SDO, the SDO, walking across 2 hills, walking for a day to reach there, and he'll say, no, come next week. And if Colonel Saab goes there, he jumps up from his seat, sir, what can I do for you? And I can do something for a whole village. Some other things that motivated me to do something.
Wow, that's truly amazing, uh, and there's something amazing about the communities also that you work with. Right? You show these pictures of children going to school, crossing a river, like a completely flooded path, and such amazing stories that you have shared with the community as themselves as well. And right, when you started, you also made this important point that there's always a kind of fear of each other, like a fear of the othering of the other,
Yes.
because you often fear
Suspicion.
what you, yes, suspicion and fear. So, so when when and you have been able to like do this so amazingly through education, right? To build that sense of trust and peace building through education. Uh, what is what starts the process of building trust, and how is it sustained? You've explained it, but how does that process start? If you like to share.
Well, no risk, no gain. You have to think out of the box. For one thing, I would like to say that we are the first movers into many of these villages. People have not come beyond the capital cities. Many others who wanted to do good, sadly, were pretty scared off by the extortion, the violence, the killings. And believe me, we don't hear much about it in the rest of India, but it is big time in many parts of the northeast. So, what uh, could I have that question again, please? You mentioned that. Uh,
Uh,
what?
yes,
Yeah,
like you said that through the work and through the passion, you and your team were able to convince the communities that we are here, that we don't have any ulterior motive, but to actually work for the well-being of children as well. But
yeah.
often when we see like civil society organizations working in any community, be it in any part of India, there's often some kind of a suspicion of the other, and
Yeah, yeah.
especially in conflict areas.
Hesitancy
So
would be the word. A
yes,
hesitancy to go ahead.
hesitancy, right, right.
Yes, to go ahead. So I think in cases like this, you need to have a sense of entrepreneurship, a sense of adventure to do something like this, and that's what qualifies every one of my team members. That they're here with that sense of curiosity, that sense of adventure, and if you look at the possibilities to sort of get to improve things, this is an untouched, it's a virgin field where people have never come before to work, and there are hundreds, thousands of good people just willing to clasp your hands and work with you to get something done. So if you can cut across that barrier of suspicion, and like I said, the biggest and the first thing is you have to be absolutely known to be an organization that is not going to interfere with them, to sort of come in with an agenda to profit and whatever. So when you can go, you can project it to them. And of course, I have, let's put it this way, my wife and I had a track record of sponsoring children even well before we started Sunbird Trust. So we had a background where people could sort of relate to and say, okay, these guys are okay and decent. Yeah, so you have to have a few things like this. That was our journey.
Right. The concept of friendship schools is like so beautiful. You talked about that uh, the schools themselves and the community themselves can add to the name and a kind of a prefix to friendship schools. Could you share a bit more about this idea as well? Like how does like the it's actually giving so much ownership and power to the school to the local community. And traditionally, I mean, what we see in a lot of schools in India is that there's a lot of disconnect with the school. The ownership over the school is something which many parents, especially parents who are very busy, who are underprivileged, they're like, we send the child to the school and then they'll take care of the rest. But the sense of ownership, would you like to share a bit more as to how you were able to kind of bring in that ownership as well? And did it require, let's say, a lot of orientation of parents, or was it something which drew themselves?
To be frank, I wouldn't say that it's always been an easy process. But when we select our partner schools, this is one thing we absolutely search for. For instance, when we select a partner school, we want to see a track record of service, a track record of commitment. In the terrible circumstances that they are doing their best. We want to see a sense of involvement of the founders or the community in that school before we touch it. And then when we go in, we create this interdependence. This is a, well, you want to call it a trick or whatever. It is plain and simple that we are working as partners. We are not come as your great saviors, and we are not come to do charity. We are equal to you in every respect. We'd like to work with you, and we cannot work alone, and we will not work alone. We will not just bring money without you being fully involved. So, for instance, now when we sponsor children to for their classes, we are paying something like 800 to 2,000 rupees per child for their hostels. So when we want the parents, we call them over on the weekend. All the parents from a particular village, please come and help out with the school. Okay, help us making this bathroom with the construction work. Help us plant a few trees. So we get the parents involved, and we have a lot of communication, regular communications where we call the parents, listen to them, hear them out, find out what are the issues they're facing, and convey our expectations. And we always tell them that the first learning can never be Sunbird. The most important people in the lives of the children is the parents. It has to start from at home. It cannot be that they've dumped with the Sunbird schools and they're just going to turn out to be doctors and IS officers and whatever. So a lot of communication with the parents. The communication is not just the school, like I mentioned. It is activities. It is mushroom training. It is putting solar for them. It is getting the doctors to work in their villages. We have started projects in mushrooms, in roselle, this type of tea. We've started a whole agriculture projects now to sort of take them away from that destructive slash and burn cultivation. So we're empowering the farmers. We have become a platform, and a trusted base for many other NGOs with other specialities to come and work alongside us in the same field. Because we were the ones who've gained the trust. Now we're able to get people in the fields of health, of livelihood, of conservation, all coming and joining with us. So all these things, when the parents see that their lot is improving so considerably, and they see their children coming to Bangalore and getting graduation, the word spreads. So there is a sense of ownership, and we do have methods of when people do not contribute. Now, for instance, even when you sponsor a child, this we expect the parents to put in 50 rupees or 100 rupees, but that they must do. Otherwise everybody becomes poor and everybody wants it free. So if they cannot give the money, you could please get us some firewood, or you get us some rice, or you come and work for 2 days. Okay, so there is a sense of partnership or whatever that is either, most of the time, 99% of the time, it is something that it just comes from them.
Right. Thank you, sir, for sharing your thoughts. We also have some comments from a lot of enthusiasm in our comments as well for your presentation. So one of the participants is saying the initiatives by Sunbird in the Northeast has brought about a drastic change and hope to many downtrodden people. So many such comments, and we'll also take one question from the audience. So here's a question. Very impressive, sir. Do you think if the government could do this, so many more children could benefit? How are you influencing policy?
Very interesting question and a very valid question. So initially we were not really involved with the government, but now we see the issues that the government itself faces. When we ourselves are down there, we know this vast diversity, this different aspirations, different communities, different tribes, the remoteness, and whatever. So I'm happy to say that now, after 3 or 4 years, the local district commissioners are approaching us to work with them in the government schools and to build capacity in those schools. You do have drastic problems in a state like Manipur, where many of the schools don't have all the teachers that were sort of paid to be there. That there are multiple reasons, because there is no accommodation for them. Perhaps in these remote villages, they come from the opposing tribe or a different tribe, and they wouldn't be comfortable coming here. There's so many reasons like that. So, how are we trying to influence policy? To be very frank, at this point of time, right from the China border, the villages from over there, right up to Manipur, we are sort of finding our feet and slowly sort of beginning to work with the government establishment without being on the activist side of things. So we are a young organization, not yet come to the phase where we can strongly influence policy. But as we are getting more trust, both from the government, we are, like I said, we are not a fault-finding organization, and I think we have taken that path where we are not going to criticize and be activist and go against the government and things like that. We'll do our best and see what can where we can unite and work together rather than what causes the differences. So the frank answer for that question is not yet into influencing policy, but could be soon there, especially with the expertise we're getting in dealing with conflict areas, which is very unique.
Right. Thank you for taking this question. Here, I would like to take another question from the audience. We are getting this question. Yes. How is the language barrier taken care of? I think during the initial contact, I sense it's between the team and the community.
Yes. So fortunately, because of this vast diversity of languages, the unifying language is English. In all these remote schools, some of the language of instruction is almost 100% English. So with whatever it is, you'll always find in a village a person who's at least one person who's educated, if not quite a few who have been out of the village, got a job, and we use them initially to get into the village. Then of course all the teachers who teach in the school are expected to know English if they have to teach in the first place. So from that perspective, it is not difficult to deal with the school and the children, but definitely with the community, we need help all the time. But now having a lot of local team members, it is being of a great help. Our interns and our local team members, we're getting, I would say, almost 30% of our Sunbird team is from the Northeast. And that number is going to be maybe more than 50% in the coming years. So, language not really a terrible threat at this, not a terrible obstacle at this point of time.
Right. Thank you for taking this question. In conclusion, I would like to ask your thoughts and vision regarding literacy. And as we are aware that at the very topmost level in India now, the new policy is talking about giving foremost priority to foundational literacy. There's a new mission around it now, and there are certain targets and goals with respect to that. If we talk about the communities and the regions where Sunbird is focusing on, what do you feel is the gap or the challenge with respect to children acquiring the very foundation literacy skills, and what should be the way forward in the next 1, 3, 5 years?
The first thing that I myself can say, and what we have done, is getting in the teachers from qualified teachers from the Northeast or from the rest of India, wherever they may be. I would call these the true patriots, so willing to take all these chances, coming to stay among, quite many challenges in these villages. But each one of these qualified teachers in one school can turn around, and I call them force multipliers. They can turn around an entire school in small steps. In small steps, it's not going to happen overnight. Many people come to us and say, what is your, what is the quality and what is the thing? We are doing it, we are right at the base, getting people into the education system. So one of the major things that I want to really start as a movement, and I'm articulating it here, is that we want not 50, 100, but I'm talking about even hundreds of people, hundreds of young professionals coming into the Northeast, and all the wealthy donors, the goodwill donors who can support one of these teachers in our schools. that is the way to go. Uh, when like I said, each of these young people come with a passion. They're able to make a very, very big change. So that is the first step that I feel. When you go to schools in the China border, like one of my team members has just been there at the request of the Speaker of the Arunachal Assembly. We were shocked to see, there's nothing there at all. There are just local children teaching other children. So the country has to make this, like something like Teach for India, an organization like this have to step up and send people, more and more people over here. They're going to make a very, very big difference. The second thing is, of course, we have to, the Northeast has been out of sight and out of mind for most people. Everything happening around Hyderabad, Bangalore, Delhi, Pune, and things like that. So we need people to broaden the vision of the contributors, the people, the CSR. That this is also part of the country, and this is where there is a most desperate need for this sort of intervention. So a couple of the things. The third leg is we're getting a lot of support from the the uniformed forces and the armed forces, especially in the remote areas, to send these young people in. They would require a degree of security support, logistics. This could come from the uniformed forces.
Right. Uh, Thank you so much, Colonel Christopher Rego, for joining us here on Detox. It's truly been very inspirational to learn about this vision and mission of Sunbird Trust, and you're leading a mission which is truly noble, and we would wish that the vision and the benefits of these initiatives reach out to maximum people, and more people join this truly amazing mission. It's not easy to work uh, in such difficult circumstances, but you've managed to not only start but sustain many people to kind of fill them with energy and work towards something much higher. And when we talk about foundational skills, it's just the starting point. But your team and your vision has been achieving something which would be the ultimate goal of a human being, which is peace. So thank you so much once again for your time and for your thoughts. We really appreciate, and thank you to all those who are joining us live and who will be watching this video as well. We hope that Colonel Chris's video, his ideas have really triggered your thoughts and inspired you to take more steps forward towards education for all children. Thank you, sir.
On behalf of the Sunbird, entire Sunbird team, thank you very much, Mashu. Thank you.